Yes, buenas tardes. I think we'll just, it's fine. Good evening, my name is Zuraidah, Dato Zuraidah. I am chairman of Yayasan Sukarelawan Siswa. It's Student Volunteers Foundation. Estudiantes? Estudiantes? Foundation. Yeah. So basically, I'll run through what we do. Basically YSS, to be short, we call ourselves YSS. The topic is, of course, students as volunteers, meaningful engagement. To us in Malaysia, we're from Malaysia, by the way. In Malaysia, we consider volunteerism as a key pillar in nation building. Yes. Right. Now, let me just share with you, YSS in Malaysia is actually wholly owned. It's 100% owned by our Ministry of Higher Education. It's a unique institution. It's owned by the ministry, but it's run like a non-profit. We are a non-profit. We're tax exempt, so we basically run like an NGO, if you like. Yeah. But we do have a few representatives from the Ministry of Higher Education who sit on my board. Speaking of board directors, I do have a couple of my board directors here. Three young and used to be young gentlemen. Whoops! All right. So yes. Right. So there you are. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just run through. Now, this is Sukarelawan Siswa. That's basically our Sukarelawan means volunteers, and Siswa is students. So this is the pyramid. YSS, we're at the helm. Below us, we've got what you call UCTC, that's University Community Transformation Center, whereby universities in Malaysia are used as transformation centers for, for areas, for development of rural areas as well. Then you have the public universities, you've got private, you've got polytechnics and college communities. So they all come through below us in the teacher training institutes. Then, of course, at the bottom of the pyramid, you've got all the, the brigades, the clubs, the associations. So technically, YSS works through institutions. So we don't have memberships and so on. So we actually go through all the colleges in the country. As long as, it's higher education. Now, we're embedded under the National Blueprint, the National Higher Education Blueprint. And these are the students' aspirations in that blueprint. This is as per the Ministry of Higher Education's, what they think or what they feel that these students' aspirations. And of course, the initiatives by Ministry of Higher Education, they value volunteerism as a very key component of the education system. Next. Right, so as I mentioned, YSS, we're embedded in this is the blueprint of the country for higher education. That goes right up to 2025, and so YSS is in there. Yeah. Next. Now, just to basically, I mentioned about YSS being part of the Ministry of Higher Education, but let me just show you, is a teaser to show you what we actually do. Yeah. This is we actually do capacity building. Those are our students and Vietnamese students. So we do joint volunteer work in Vietnam, Laos, and so on. In ASEAN, by the way. Right, so that's a sneak preview. Let me just share with you. We do capacity building. We're not actually running programs as such. Well, we do, but primarily the background is we were only launched in 2012. When I received my thing for basically the scroll that says you're the chairman, yeah, and then my latest board directors, yeah, next. And what I'd like to say here is this: the vision is actually to develop Malaysia as a hub for volunteers, student volunteers, and to produce icon volunteers. That's the the intention by the government is actually, we want to produce icons, we want to produce volunteer leaders to take them to the next stage, on the global stage. So how do we do that? So the process is really, we need to encourage, we need to educate and guide all these young ones. By the way, we've got 3 of them out here, all the young volunteer leaders, not just any leaders, but to make them to become global volunteer leaders. So this is all part of this capacity building and training. Yeah? And when we actually do these programs, or these student volunteer missions, we call them, we actually have them under 6 clusters. So these are our volunteer clusters. So we've got medical cluster, medical and health cluster. We've got education cluster, agro, bio and environment, ICT and social entrepreneurship, agriculture, and then of course disaster and crisis management. Now, when we run these missions, ladies and gentlemen, we actually make sure that every mission must have all these clusters. And when the students, they actually go through the process, because when you want to train them to become leaders, it's actually teaching them or educating them or guiding them to have these technical skills, experiential learning. You have to make sure that they learn organizational skills, project management and so on. Then they must teach. They must have all these other components. Say for instance, if you're a medical student, you will be doing health screening. But you must also do a community engagement. So in other words, you could be building roads as well, like just now the teaser, one or two, a couple of them are actually medical students learning how to build roads. Oops, right. And of course, we also make sure that they teach. That's a compulsory, mandatory component, the cluster. Everyone must teach, regardless of who you are, what you are. So, English is important. We do work not just within Malaysia, but in ASEAN. That means in Vietnam, Laos, and so on and so forth. So we've got our counterparts, and who actually, they're also involved in capacity building of their students. So technically within Asia, within ASEAN, the important thing is actually capacity building, to train up our students to become volunteer leaders. Next. Yeah, so as I mentioned about the, the objectives, ladies and gentlemen, so primarily the objectives are to promote Malaysia as an educational hub, to, basically to build international networking and so on and so forth. Yeah? Right, these are important to us. These are our values, yeah? These are the thrusts. We've got about 5 thrusts. Number 1 is to create leadership. So that's important for us. It's not, universities will do all the programs. We're not that. We're actually creating leadership amongst the students. Yeah. So we actually collaborate with all the colleges, the universities, and we get them to actually nominate their students, the potential students, potential leaders, and to actually attend interviews. And they have to be interviewed. It's not automatic. And from the students, then what happens is that we then actually, once they're chosen, then we actually take them to attend the missions. So we organize diversified, high-impact volunteer programs. These are called missions, student volunteer missions. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not really funded by the government as such, so what happens is we actually have to go out and actually get, seek private corporate sponsors for the missions that we undertake. So in that respect, we have to make sure that our programs are actually low cost but high impact. And we measure all our programs. So we base all our measurements on the meeting the requirements of the SDG, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So for everything that they do, they are taught on how to measure those goals. Yeah? And we work towards fortifying the ecosystem of volunteerism together with the colleges, together with all the institutions of higher learning. We make sure that we assist the government aspiration towards wanting this ecosystem of volunteerism. We encourage strategic networking. We've got collaborations, fantastic collaborations. Right now, we're pretty much ASEAN-centric, so we collaborate, but we also sent out, recently we had a mission in Calais, France, to help the refugee transit camp. So we do go out, these are pilot missions that we are embarking. And we reinforce student volunteer training. As I mentioned, we're very much capacity building. So it's actually making sure that our student volunteers are trained. We won't allow them to go out, into the rural areas or even to help out without training. So we ensure that they have to be trained. And we've got very strict standard operating procedures, whereby there is a pre-departure training before they go. During the mission itself, they have to, as I mentioned, they have to do community engagement, they have to teach, and they have to write a report every night. Regardless how tired you are, you have to write a report. And when they come back, they have to present. It's like a viva voce. They have to present to a panel, And we really drill them because we want to make sure it's impactful. It's not just one of those where you just want to go and have fun. No. We tell them you're not tourists, you're not volunteers, you are actually really training to become leaders, and you have to justify everything. And one of the important SOP of ours is really evidence-based. So anything that they say or do, they have to justify it. It must be evidence-based. So their motherhood statements, when they say, I made an impact to this community, and we want to say, we would ask how, why, show us evidence, proof. So that will be proof of before, during, and after. So, and then they have their own personal KPIs, key performance indicators, whereby because we are training them to be leaders, they have to go back to their colleges and then present it to their college. So that's part of the training that they have to go through with us. Yeah? Right, and of course, this is our, if you like, it's like our, our values. We believe in inclusiveness. Malaysia, you may or may not know, we're multiracial, we're multi-religious, and so on. So we come from different ethnic groups. So we make sure that every mission, students' volunteer mission, comprise all the various ethnic groups as much as possible. And because we deal with universities, whether they're private or public, college communities, community colleges, polytechnics, teachers training institutes. So each particular mission would comprise all the students from these various colleges. So there will be, in one mission, you'd have them from different backgrounds, different colleges, different disciplines, different, ethnicity. So it's really quite a challenge. So to us in Malaysia, we believe that if you want to be a leader, you have to make sure that you actually know how to lead different sets of people with different backgrounds. Right, so we start them young. And of course, it's an immersion program, which means they eat, they live, they breathe with the community. So that's important to us. They're immersed in that community. So they stay, they homestay. So if they stay 2 weeks, say in the rural areas, the really rural areas of Borneo, for instance, then they really have to stay with the host family, we call it. Then they have to eat what the family eats and so on. But we do have sensitivities because even within ourselves, we've come from different, we have different religions, for instance. We're primarily predominantly Muslims. So for our Muslim students, we need to make sure that they're actually exposed to living with non-Muslim communities, even within Malaysia. So this is all part of the process of making them aware of the differences within cultures. So it's a challenge not just taking them to ASEAN, but it's also within Malaysia. Yeah? Not to mention coming to Europe is even bigger challenge. And of course, we believe in the right volunteers with the right job. So if you're a medical student, your basic experiential learning will involve basically the health and medical cluster. And of course, it's high impact, and we believe in producing global volunteer leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, because we started in 2012, so it's still a work in progress. Right, so these are, our strategic alliances to date, and of course, we're pleased that we're a member of IAVE, and of course, we're also registered civil society under United Nations DPI, and of course, we work closely with UN volunteers. We celebrate the, IVD, the International Volunteer Day, and so on and so forth. So these are some of our collaborators and sponsors and agencies. Right, so these are just a snapshot photograph of, this is in Sarawak. Sarawak is all in Borneo, then in Laos, in Lao PDR and Vietnam. So we'll show you another teaser. We go to Laos every year, it's Lao PDR. This is a typical school, high school in Lao PDR. They all ride motorcycles to school. So, problem? Indiscriminate parking. That's the school. So what our boys and girls did, together with Laotian students, remember everywhere we go is together. Our students and their students, they came up with a solution. That's our Malaysian students, and the ones who grew up the Laotian students. Solution? Simple. Build motorcycle park in Ban Putong. These are, you know, it may look very simple, but actually is very impactful for a lot of these areas. Say, for instance, one particular area in Bang Sukuma, for instance, that's in what do you call this, in Lao PDR. What we found is that, you know, in some of the schools, they would have lots of cows and lots of cow dung, for instance. But they use the cow dung for manure, but they never actually do, or, you know, actually have compost. So our students, or agriculture students, would then actually, you know, basically educate them on how to do compost. And then at the end, it also did the manual in Laotian language. So sometimes these are the things that you find it's important to actually leave to make sure that your counterparts, i.e. your students from Laos, actually will be able to continue. So there must be that sustainability as well. Yeah. Right. So these are, you know, the media profile that we've had from Vietnam, from Sarawak, from Laos. Yeah. Yes. So this was in Vietnam. Vietnam, we're the only foreign country allowed to or invited to participate in their the Green Summer Volunteer Campaign every year. That's for 1 whole month. Sometimes it's 5 weeks, from the middle of July to August, where the whole country of Vietnam literally participates in this student volunteer activities. Yeah. So in a nutshell, from 2012 to 2016, we've you know, produced, if you like, about 465 volunteer leaders, out of whom inevitably, I'm pleased, they tend to win awards. When they go back, they win some kind of awards or other, you know, whether it is, you know, the National Volunteer Student, or, you know, there are also, a few of them are quite smart, like the ones who are here. You know, they are also scholars and, you know, so as I said, and then they also become, you know, presidents of their students' union. You know, somehow that seems to be a trend, because suddenly I think it's an eye-opener. The confidence build-up, so we're quite pleased. You know, at local level, for them to be presidents of the Students' Council is a big deal. I think it's a big deal, even anywhere for that matter. Yeah, next. Right, so these are basically our alumni success stories. This was just recently, earlier this year, for 2015. Out of 11 finalists for volunteer leaders at student level, 7 were actually our alumni. Alumni, we term them, any one of them who's actually gone through one mission, then automatically they're called alumni. They could still be very well be in college. Yeah. So we also have the King Scholars, in other words, academically inclined, they're first-class graduates. A couple of them have gone on to do their PhDs and masters. One husband is here, so he's a PhD scholar. So you know, so they're all King Scholars, and which means they're top creme de la creme. Yeah. Next. Yeah. So these are you know, Ismar's here. Yeah, so these are some of our, and inevitably, whenever the other ministries, like Ministry of Foreign Affairs, say they, you know, recently they hosted the ASEAN Summit, where President Obama, for instance, you know, and other heads of countries that came. So our student leaders, our alumni, were actually picked to become minders or to become so. Like a Polytechnic student, Leo, so he was actually one of the minders for President Obama, for instance. And we also had this Defense Services Asia. So a lot of these international events organized by other ministries, and they would inevitably invite our student leaders or our alumni to actually become minders or actually act as ambassadors, young ambassadors for these events. So in a nutshell, basically, what do? We do capacity building, we do training. We hope that some of them at least, or if not all of them, will actually become global volunteer leaders, because it's all part of that, this millennial, this young ones, and we want to make sure that they actually take on to the international stage. So in a nutshell, that's us. And before I end, next year, we're pleased to say that we'll be hosting or co-hosting with the Ansan Salam, that's another foundation. We'll be co-hosting the IAVE Asia Pacific Regional Youth Conference. So please, you're all welcome to Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you for actually staring at me when you said millennial. I have been warned about time, so I'm gonna make this quick, but